All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Ashley, and our wonderful guest today for our Conversation Cafe is Rameez Karim, who is on my left. I don't know where he is for you. And so today's topic is going to be dance as a sacred art. Um, I was super lucky to have met Rameez many years ago through friends and have had the opportunity to take his Bollywood dance classes, which are amazing. And just to see him grow as an artist in the time that we have lived in Montreal. And so it is so exciting to have him with us today to talk about dance as a sacred art, because aside from being a dancer and choreographer, he is also a deeply spiritual person who connects his performance to his sense of spirituality. And so we're going to talk about both of those things today. And then after our conversation, we'll open it up and everybody can ask questions if they have any, or share some ideas. In our conversation, we always just want to come at it from a place of respect and curiosity. So we like to say we're a safe space for brave conversations. So don't be afraid to ask questions that might make you feel uncomfortable, to venture out into unknown territory and to get out of your comfort zone, but to always just do it with respect and curiosity. This is being recorded as well, so if you don't really want to speak, you can always write a question in the chat. And if you don't want to be on video, it's okay to turn your camera off as well. Like, we respect that. So I'm gonna I'll read Rameez's little bio, and then we can start in. I sort of shortened what you had written for me there. So Rameez is a Montreal-based multi-dance genre choreographer, instructor, and performer. He is the former assistant director of Bollywood Blast. In 2019, Rameez launched his new troupe Veils of Bollywood at the 15th Annual Choreographers Ball in Toronto. Rameez's extensive exposure to different styles of movement has allowed him to create using a vast palette rich in many forms of cultural expression. Being part of the Ismaili Muslim community, he incorporates elements of spirituality and enlightenment into his work. He is pursuing a Bachelor of Fine Arts at Concordia with a major in contemporary dance, specializing in creation and choreography. And so that is just the basics. Rameez has worked with so many people, so many big names in both Western dance and Bollywood and in the music and film industry. And so I'm sure you may share a story or two about that today as well. And people can also check out your social media links for more of that too. But I guess to start, we always kind of ask people how they started out with what they're involved in. So how did you start dancing and what attracted you to it?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was young, my parents put me in a lot of different extracurricular activities, different kinds of sports, and I really wasn't enjoying any of them. I wasn't having fun. I was, cranky a lot of the time when I was doing these activities, and it wasn't the activities I was put in. I wasn't resonating with any of them. There were things like figure skating, karate, soccer, tennis, like so many different things, and I just wasn't enjoying myself. I always danced as a child. Growing up, I sort of did very performative things. I have little videos of myself dancing and, being very dramatic and theatrical since I was very, very young. But I don't think my family ever considered putting me into dance classes and that being something that could be a recreational activity. So there was a local dance school that was run by somebody in the community, and they put on this recreation of a Bollywood movie. And to support them, my family went and bought tickets, and we went to the dance show. And for me, that was really a turning point, because when I saw that show, my eyes were like lighting up, and I was so just in awe. I was so in awe of what I saw on stage. And my family recognized that, and they saw that that was something that had really interested me. So I decided to go into dance classes after they asked me if I was interested in that, if that was something I would want to pursue and do. And I said yes, and I started taking dance classes. I showed a lot of interest. I spent a lot of hours and a lot of my time dancing, and it always remained something that was very recreational. And I did competitive dance also growing up, but it still remained very recreational. It wasn't something that I ever considered would be a job or a career path or something that I could do for a living. And that, of course, was also because because of cultural barriers and the upbringing that I had coming from the communities that I came from. But after I went into CEGEP, I started to see the real possibility of having dance as a job. And it started as something more part-time. And now it's evolved into something that I'm supporting myself with and something that I'm really, really trying to pursue. As a life. And thank God I've been able to get some really amazing and some really cool opportunities. I've been able to meet some really cool people, but at the same time there's a lot of work I believe that needs to be done in the dance industry, in the dance sphere, within my community and within other communities. And so, you know, me being involved with dance was something I think kind of accidental, but there was some kind of an intention, and I never really thought that it would flourish into something like this, but I kind of just went with the flow and experienced what I experienced on the way. And I've never really looked back at anything except to reflect and learn. But otherwise, I kept moving forward with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And was curious too how your culture and faith background have influenced the styles of dance that you have decided to perform or gotten involved with.
So I grew up in an Ismaili Muslim household. From our history, our lineage is from India, from Gujarat, from the Western province. However, my family had migrated to Kenya and had been based there for a few generations. So there's a very interesting play of dynamics that my family experienced that I also grew up with culturally. Even though dance has a long history in Islamic and South Asian cultures within expression and it being art, only now is it being recognized as a respectable career. And you know, through my journey with dance, you know, there were certain aspects of what I was being exposed to in religion that I didn't necessarily resonate with. And at first I felt really guilty about that, that, you know, I was feeling this sort of disconnection, that I wasn't resonating with some of the principles we were being taught, some of the way that the principles were being carried forward rather. And, you know, I got really inspired when I did more research about the role that dance and art and expression has played in Islam. And I was really sort of taken aback by the devotion and the dedication and the commitment of the whirling dervishes who come from the Sufi faith, who make up a very small percentage of Muslims that fall under this greater branch of Islam. But for them, dance is something so sacred, and it's something that they use to meditate, and it's something that they use to really, really connect to their divine power, to the divine power above. And so nuances of all of that I've been exposed to, because Ismailism is something that recognizes the arts and acknowledges them, and now it's become something that is really being encouraged by the community on all levels, you know, from the leadership all the way down to parents and families who see the value and the role that art plays. And for me, I'll speak specifically to dance, but it's the same thing for all art forms, no matter what the medium is. So
wonderful.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work, again, like I said, that has to be done. And these are things I've learned through being involved with the community and being involved with different organizations. However, whenever I see that there's something that needs to be done, it's always a motivational catalyst to push me forward in evolving the sphere and, you know, making it a better, more inclusive and more pluralistic place. And these are all notions that I've learned through my upbringing as an Ismaili Muslim.
Wow, that's so wonderful. I find Ismaili, or is it Ismailism?
Ismailism is kind of like the ideology, but Ismaili, like, yeah, I would say I'm an Ismaili.
Okay.
Plural, we would be Ismailis.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could just like a little side tour to quickly mention kind of what makes Ismaili Islam like Ismaili, because I feel like a lot of people, while they might know the basics of Islam, might not know specifically what the Ismaili tradition is really about.
Yeah, so we're a very diverse subset of Islam. There's like in the whole context of Islam in general, you know, there's two sort of branches. There's Shias and there's Sunnis. So we fall under the Shia branch. In the Islamic world, we are seen as a much less extremist and a more tolerant and a more liberal sect of Islam. And this brings about its own challenges, but we were always taught that community service, being connected to the community, being connected to yourself, always giving. These are all notions that I've grown up with. And Ismailism, from what I understand, is also one of the only, well, the only sect of Islam that has a living guide, who is His Highness the Aga Khan. And so his lineage can be traced back to to Hazrat Ali, who was our first Imam. And, this in itself has really big implications. Yeah, we come from different parts of the world. The Ismaili community resides in some primary places, which being the Indo-Pak subcontinent, so India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. There's also very large communities in the Middle East, primarily in Syria and Iran. And there's also a large community in Central Asia. So this includes places like Tajikistan, Afghanistan. There's also, from what I've been told, a large community in China as well. But there's certain notions of governments and societies that don't allow for Ismailis to always be as freely expressive in some parts of the world as they are in other parts of the world. Okay. And so all these mix of cultures and dynamics and of different peoples makes up this really diverse mosaic of Ismailis that are now all around the world. They've branched out to Europe. There's a very large community in North America. In Montreal, we have about 8,000 or 9,000. That's the size of the community here. And yeah, they've become very big contributors to society, and they try to always better the environment around them through their own contributions, while keeping, the core fundamentals of Islam in their being. And yeah, that's sort of what I've retained from what I've been taught throughout my life and through, religion classes and through my own research. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. I think that's such a wonderful introduction to that, and really gets at the core of sort of like something that I could see really very much inspiring people into the arts as a very expressive form of Islam. And so I guess a question would be then, like, how has dance connected you to your spirituality? Because it seems like you started out as dance seemed kind of recreational and fun, and then you also had your faith. And were those two always kind of intertwined, or did it become spiritual at some point?
They weren't always intertwined. At a certain point, and this was sort of around the time of the Jubilee Arts Festival, which was in 2018, around 2016, 15, I started questioning about my connection to spirituality on a much deeper level, and how I could connect and resonate with something that I was sort of not losing interest in, but that I wasn't necessarily resonating with. And I saw opportunities to engage other youth and to engage other artists like myself in a practice that allows us to introspect and acknowledge our connection to ourself and to this higher power through a language that is very tactile and that is very digestible. And so again, taking the inspiration of the whirling dervishes, they spin and they spin and they spin and for hours and hours and hours, and it's seen as something that is so meditative, and they're so focused and they're so into it, that becomes the entire existence of their being and their experience. And I thought, like, wow, there has to be a way for me to gain that kind of a connection, to gain that sort of connection to this power, because I fully believe that there is divine power. I don't think we're just here for the sake of, I believe everything and everyone has a purpose. And in accessing those channels of information and in accessing that part of me, dance has really helped me physically, but also, when I'm conceptualizing something, the meaning behind it, the intention behind it, it all becomes a full circle experience. And it's really provided me the space to explore, to acknowledge, to understand, to connect, and to really diversify just myself and my artistic practice and my experience of living.
Nice. Oops, there we go. Someone else is joining us. Yeah. So you mentioned the Jubilee Arts Festival, and I know that you wanted to speak a bit more about that as well. believe it's called Safar-e-Nur.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so did you want to just sort of share, I don't know if you created that piece on your own or if that was collaborative, but I know that the Jubilee Arts Festival is related to the Ismaili community, right? Like it's
Yeah.
part of,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So to give a bit of context, the Jubilee Arts Festival was a cultural initiative that was put forth by the international Ismaili community. And it was a series of showcases to showcase the different kinds, the different mediums, and the different level of arts that exist within the community. It was a festival that featured people from all over the world, and it sort of worked in a way that there was a regional showcase, and there were participants selected from a regional showcase to go to a national showcase. From the national showcase, there were participants selected to represent the country in its respective art medium at an international showcase. So, there was like a film festival, there was an art gallery, and there was the talent showcase. It was divided into these three main areas. And then within the gallery setting, for example, you had sculpture, or you had painting, or you had photography. In the movie festival, you had things like documentaries or short films. In the talent showcase, you had things that were related to music or singing or dance. And so it was a very well-rounded festival that tried to engage and reach artists in all different mediums that exist within the arts community. And so I saw this as an opportunity to really explore and put something together that could be super meaningful and that could convey a message of devotion, of spirituality, and also showcase the greater Ismaili community what interpretation of spirituality and devotion can look like. Because at the time, it was something that was a bit new within the community. We always have resorted to more folk dances or cultural dances, or for example, Bollywood, when we do a lot of our pieces. So there's not lots of abstract or symbolistic or pieces that represent like greater concepts. So I really wanted to think outside the box and present something that was going to be meaningful, not only for me, but for everybody that was viewing it. I think the beautiful thing about dance and seeing a presentation is that it's in the eyes of the viewer, and they can take whatever they want from it, and as long as if it sparks a conversation within yourself or amongst people, and if it does something inside, I feel like that's super valuable in someone's experience. So I saw this opportunity to put a piece together, and the idea of it actually came while I was meditating early in the morning, which I thought was really just intense. It was really crazy when I got the idea. And the piece Safar-e-Nur literally means struggle. And it was about our aspiration to connect to the light, or to divine power, and how to feed our souls. And this was done using movement and dance as a primary medium. We used a quote from Rumi, who is a poet, and I'll just read it to you because I found it so beautiful. The quote states, "There is a life force within your soul. Seek that life. There is a gem in the mountain of your body. Seek that mine. Oh, traveler, if you are in search of that, don't look outside. Look inside yourself and seek that." So, this whole journey was something that symbolized, patience, humility, allowing space for ourselves, but also for others. And it was an extension of how I saw and how I envision our community, coming from all different backgrounds, sort of working together to uplift each other with this common goal of connection to divine energy. And I wanted to think really outside the box, and I have a very big fascination with technology and how that can be incorporated into my dance and artistic practice. So what I decided to do after researching and speaking to many people was to install LED lights around the rim of the skirt that we had designed. And everything from the costume to the music, to the jewelry, to the makeup, to the hair, it was a fusion of the different cultural influences that exist within the community, and specifically the influences that exist within the Montreal community, because I thought that was extremely important to showcase and to bring forth as a conversation. Because diversity, pluralism, these are all very prominent themes that we hold as Ismailis, but sometimes in the execution and in the implementation of these values, it's not always in line. And so I also use this piece sort of as a conversation starter to speak about that. So as the piece unfolded throughout the 5 minutes, the 4 or 5 minutes that we were given, each dancer's costume lit up at a different time, and this symbolized a moment of them being enlightened. So, I tried to recognize and understand that not everybody has the same path when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to, connecting to this divine energy. And so I also wanted that to be very apparent in the dance, and that's why I decided to have people light up at different times. There's a storyline in the dance where, there's portions where the community sort of is more individualistic at the beginning and everyone is sort of in it for themselves. There's portions where people in the community struggle and other members of the community try to help them and try to lift them up. And the piece culminates in this celebration of everybody coming together and everybody working together. And I tried to make that apparent in the movements, in the formation. So for example, we all come together at the end in a circle and then we come back out. It was something that was very required a lot of introspection, but also required a lot of mindfulness for the dancers and the artists that I was working with, because we all come from different backgrounds, different traditions, different families, different dynamics that, were blockages at times. So as much as this piece was extremely fun and extremely nourishing, there were also lots of moments of difficulty, from the conceptualization all the way to the execution, all the way to the final performance in Lisbon.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot, but at the end of the day, to represent Canada on an international platform, it was such an amazing feeling, and it was so amazing to see that this idea, this concept, was something that came literally just out of nowhere. It was something that was abstract. It was something that was not tangible, that people couldn't digest. I couldn't even digest it myself at first. And, after working with my team to see how that came from like an idea, something so abstract, to something that was digestible, something that people could watch and see and react to, it was really, really remarkable. And it was something really cool. Yeah. It was really fun.
I'm wondering if there is a recording of that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There is a recording, and what I can do is post it in the chat, and I can also send it to you. So if you want to post the link.
Yeah, I would love to, because when we share this recording, we can put the link sort of below the recording, and people can check out that alongside of your social media presence.
Absolutely. Yes.
I really want. I'm like, the idea of everything like lighting up when someone reaches that sense of enlightenment is like, I got shivers. I was like, I need to see this.
No, it ended up being a really, really amazing and a really cool piece. And, I tried to keep these values of keeping everything very local and keeping everything very Montreal-based, so that the energy would be very much, around the community that resides here. And so it really, really came through in the end, and it created something that was super beautiful. I watch it all the time to relive the whole creative and artistic process, and it's something that would be of interest to see for sure. So I can send you the link. Absolutely.
Great. And then I guess a follow-up would be, was that experience in itself a transformative experience? Like, did it change you in some way, and like, how so?
It really did. The two things that it taught me were resilience, because throughout the entire process, we faced a lot of hurdles, a lot of roadblocks that could have really affected us negatively. For example, when we did the national Jubilee Arts Festival in Toronto, which was a gathering of all the different artists who were selected from the regional events in Toronto. So from Toronto, we would select a group that was going to go to Portugal. So the night before our performance, all of us had rented a car to travel from Montreal to Toronto. We were at a celebratory event for the community, and when we came back, our car had been broken into. And it was such an intensely emotional period, because, as it was, everybody was stressing about their performance the next day. We had a very early start to the morning. We had to be at the venue the whole day. There were multiple run-throughs followed by our actual performance. And, just the atmosphere of performing the next day for such a prestigious and such a big event. our car got broken into. We were all freaking out. Of course, we had to, fill out police reports, and we had to call the company, and we had to go through so much. And then just the stress, of having a broken window and having to drive back. Our schedule did not allow us to get a replacement, and because it was the weekend, the rental places were closed early. So just examples like that of roadblocks. At first, I had no idea how I was going to incorporate these LED lights. And I had actually met with somebody who does a little bit of, like, I don't know what you would call it, a bit of an electrician. And so he was helping me try to figure out how I could install these lights. And he brought up, like, fusing things and adding a switch and battery packs. And I was like, what am I going to do to bring this to fruition? Within our teammates, there were disagreements, and there were moments where we had to deal with some really, really serious mental health issues. And that in itself proved to be really challenging to deal with, because it was something that I wasn't necessarily familiar dealing with. And because I was the head choreographer of the team, I had to really step up my leadership skills and make sure that everybody was taken care of in their own way. And I had to be very sensitive and very mindful of everyone's individual needs and what they needed in order to succeed, because we had to present something that was extremely polished and extremely put together. And this was a requirement put forth by the adjudication committees, and the other challenge I faced was that I was working with artists and dancers who were not necessarily trained professionally. They took a few classes here and there, or they had some dance experiences on a community level, but none of them had really trained on a very serious level or had as heavy of a dance background as I did. So it also required a lot of patience on my end. If I had to re-show movements, if I had to explain the pathways of certain movements like 100 times, I had to do it, So creating the piece and being on the team and leading the team, it taught me, again, resilience. It taught me perseverance. It taught me mindfulness. It taught me patience. It really amplified all these qualities that sort of already existed, but you can always be better. You can always improve. And I'm only starting to now realize, when I reflect back on that process, how much I grew, because I'm starting to realize if you're comfortable, it doesn't always necessarily mean that you're growing. And as a human, as an artist, as a dancer, I'm here to grow, and I'm here to learn, and I'm here to better myself. And so now I'm realizing, I'm glad all those situations of discomfort happened, because they taught me so many positive values and attributes that I can look back on. And now I can be like, okay, wow, I'm a much stronger and I'm a much better person. And sometimes we need that. I consider it tough love from the universe, tough love and tests from the universe. When we really, really want something, the universe tests us, and it's up to us to really push forward and to be optimistic and be positive and work through them. That's the only way. That's how we get through life, right? Is by taking it one day at a time, working through everything, and trying to be the best version of ourselves in that process and coming out of that process.
Kind of interesting, almost like there's a parallel with this dance that you wanted to create, about introspection and enlightenment, and then not even just the process of creating it, but through like your car being broken into and all of these other like hurdles that you ran into. It's like that forced you to do a lot of introspecting in your own life around the dance. So it's just kind of interesting how those things sort of happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at the end of the day, we perform the dance with a very, very specific intention. And every time we did the dance, whether it was in practice, in rehearsals, or whether it was on a stage presenting it, I always told my team to really, really, mind you, they had like maybe 5 seconds once they got on stage, but to really dive down into that deep place, wherever that took them. And certain things, like, okay, getting on stage, because our beginning position was on the ground on our knees with our hands placed on our thighs. And so I tried to incorporate practices like, okay, close your eyes. I know it's going to be a little bit of an overload of information and nerves and adrenaline, so just take the moment when you get on stage to close your eyes, breathe. And we all said a little prayer together before we started. Things like that I found really brought us together as a community, really brought us together as a group. And it really allowed our connection to move beyond the physical realm and create this this greater space of connection that the audience really picked up on and resonated with. And this is something that I've tried to incorporate into my practice, is the energy flow and the energy exchange amongst the dancers that I'm working with, not only with me, but with each other. Because, you know, when there's tension, when there's stress, when there's negativity, those dynamics, to me at least, are very evident, and they show on stage, and they come through in the performance. And the intention of this piece was so pure, and it was something so positive, and something that I wanted to really convey this to the audience. So it was crucial for me that even through all the discomfort and through all of the maybe arguments or disagreements, that all of us still came together and kept the greater picture in mind at the end of the day. And again, this also is a greater extension of how I see the community working. You know, we all come from different cultures, we all come from different backgrounds, we all come from different experiences, but you know, we all have to keep that common humanity goal in mind, and work together through those differences, and work together through whatever we're going through. And in this, we all have to create more space for each other, to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic, to be more sympathetic, and to be more kind. Because right now, especially, we're living in a time where that isn't necessarily always at the forefront of what we want the experience to be.
Absolutely. It's so wonderful. I guess too would be like, how has dance affected your everyday life? Like, how does it affect the way that you go about your life and who you are now and how you've become as a person?
Yeah, definitely. Dance, I mean, it really, for me, it really is my whole being, you know. And it really is a lifestyle that I live. I dance every day. I move every day. And you know, for me, when I thought about it, I was like, you know, we move before we speak. And you know, it's something that is, it just, movement is such an intrinsic part of our being. And you know, for me, I've been moving since I was young, and there's just something about movement and being able to express yourself non-verbally that really resonates with me. And when I try to express myself through using movement in dance, for me at least, I find it comes off much more clearly, and I'm able to really express it. And sometimes it's not necessary that if there's somebody who's watching, that they have to understand what is going on. Because as much as I think dance is a very performative practice, it is also something that can be very therapeutic and very intimate for yourself. And I use it on both levels. I use it on a level where, you know, it's performative, and it's to entertain, and it's to showcase something. But at the same time, I do believe there's very, you know, therapeutic, and there's very valuable, it's a very valuable tool to use for your own healing, and approaching your own traumas, and approaching your own feelings. Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I, like myself, like many others, I'm sure, I'm struggling with, you know, mental health issues, with anxiety, with nervousness, with, you know, fear. And dance has really allowed me to tap into that, and to verbalize it in a way that is not verbal. And you know, it's, yeah, it allows me to speak in a language that I know and that I understand. And it really has helped me heal, and it really has helped me help others heal. Throughout, when the pandemic started, I started giving classes online, because I saw the value that it was having on people's mental health, and how it was really affecting them in a positive way, in a productive way, in a way that made them feel better after doing my classes. And so using dance to heal, using dance to help people, using dance to, you know, break barriers and traditional stigmas, these are all things that I'm approaching, and that I'm incorporating into my practice on a daily basis. You know, so for me, dance is very much like a thorough and full circle experience, from, you know, the time I wake up to right now, because I'm at school in Concordia. A lot of it is focused on learning and being a sponge to absorb information from a world that I'm not so familiar in, because it's contemporary dance, and I have going into the Concordia program, my level of contemporary dance, my knowledge of contemporary dance was very little. And now that I'm in the program, I'm really learning new tools, new ways to broaden my horizons, and it's opening up new doors for me to evolve my practice and diversify it.
I think it's amazing. I remember too in the first lockdown in March when everything happened and it was super scary, and you did a lot of Instagram live classes, and you just offered them for free or by donation. And I did a few of those, and I found that to be incredibly therapeutic. And I think dance right now more than ever maybe is extra powerful because so much of what we do right now is sitting. And even when we're connecting digitally, like we're often very stationary, like we're sitting in front of a screen or we're sitting in front of a computer. And so to like dance together even virtually is like, an embodied experience. And I think, that's something that we probably don't have enough of this year. And so I think it's amazing that you're offering that. And I think it's great that you're talking about that. And I hope that like people can kind of think about that too, in ways that they can create an embodied experience to sort of find meaning and make sense of things and have a sense of like therapeutic release even for a lot of what we're feeling now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now in my program, I'm taking as an elective an introduction to art therapies course. And that course has really opened my eyes on how therapeutic different art forms can be, not just dance, but music and drama and theater and singing and dance. Like it covers these different areas. And I myself, all these years, didn't know that dance therapy was something that existed, number one, and number two was gaining so much momentum and so much speed. The dance therapy industry in Canada is not as evolved as it is maybe in the States or in Europe, but dance therapy is something that I'm highly considering, and it's something that I think can really bring further value to more people. But it also could allow me to work with specialized groups of people and helping them deal with their traumas and helping them deal with whatever struggles that they're going through on a daily or weekly or in whatever experience they're having with life. So for sure, I think that the arts in general have such a massive benefit on our life. And if you look at the context of the pandemic, I think artists really, number one, stepped up, and number two, provided a way for people to cope with everything. Being at home, I know so many of my own friends and people in my circles that were playing music or that would try drawing or try painting or maybe try a dance class. And so art is such an essential part of our being, and I think whether we realize it or not, it's everywhere. It's just a matter of tuning in and seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could ask you questions all day, but it's almost 2:45. And so I just kind of want to open it up in case everyone who is here in the conversation also want to ask you some questions, or if there's anything else that you wanted to share. Okay, Stefan already has a hand raised, so.
Yes. Okay. Is the audio working?
It's a little low. Are you able to turn the volume up a bit?
This should be better.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, that is better. Apologies for the technical delay. I just want to say, not a question so much as a comment. Thank you so much for sharing this experience of being the lightning rod for this inspiration and of working to manifest it. It's just very inspirational, especially in these times, to hear somebody who's followed that path and has something to show for it, including a recording, which I'll be watching after this. When you meditate, when you create that space for yourself to let the sacred in, what approaches do you usually use? Is there anything you focus on? Are there any mantras, chants?
Not specifically, not really. I'm very much somebody right now that is trying to go with the feeling of things and with the flow of things. And I try to put in an intention maybe, but it's not, I don't, there's nothing specific that goes on in my mind. I try to just, if my mind wanders, I think that's okay. I allow myself to wander. And And I think that's also a part of how my meditative practice can bring forth ideas or access maybe channels of information. There are times where I'm just completely still, and my intention is to just be, and is to just to have a blank mind. And this I practice when there's too much information, or there's I'm getting a lot of stimuli. For me, meditation also, I've started dancing outside much more amongst nature, and usually in areas that are not so full of people. And I find that just dancing, just moving, improvising, looking at what's around me, breathing. Breath is a really, really important part of my practice now. Being outside in itself is such a meditative practice for me, because I'm feeling such a deeper sense of connection to nature, especially since the pandemic has started. I learned that I was taking some things for granted, and I didn't want to continue that mentality, and I didn't want to continue that, because now I'm seeing that it was limiting at times, and it potentially blocked some really valuable information, or some really interesting ideas or propositions that I could explore. And this is what sort of meditation means to me. This is what it has done for me. And I think meditating is also an evolving practice. I don't think that there's one specific formula for people to use, because it's something so intimate, and it's something so introspective and so personal, and everyone is wired differently, I guess I can say. And so of course, meditative practices will differ, but I find that going with the flow, and maybe putting in an intention beforehand, and just allowing your mind to deliver what it wants to deliver. It's like this is a separate person. At times I feel that way, that the mind and the body are completely separate at times. And at times where it's really interesting that they can work together. Sometimes it's also interesting to see what the dissociation of both can be, and what they say to each other. And that's something I'm trying to really explore now as well, is, okay, how can I separate the mind and the body, and how do they interact? Whereas, we're told so much sometimes in dance to have them both together. How does it work to separate, or how does it work to pay attention to one more than the other? And, for me, that's also part of my practice. Yeah, did that answer your question?
It did, and more. Thank you.
It did, and more. Okay, great. Thank you.
We have other questions, raised hands. Jess, yeah. You're on mute, so there we go.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Rameez, for this information, the love that you've brought into, the dance. I also am a fan of dancing, and I'm wondering if you've got any classes that that you're giving online, or are some things that are available.
Right now, I'm teaching one class a week. It's with Studio 303. It's an open level Bollywood class. It happens on Wednesdays. The classes right now are via Zoom, because we're still in a red zone, so all the dance studios are closed for group classes. So I'm giving those classes on Wednesdays from 7:30 to 8:45. Right now, that's the only class. I'm trying to see how the regulations are changing to plan stuff for 2021, but likely that Bollywood class will probably be the only thing that I'm doing for the rest of the semester. It's happening until mid-December. But for now, I'm just teaching that open level Bollywood class on Wednesdays.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Jess is also an artist as well, with a very spiritual dimension. She actually has a book published of her art that is written with a repetitive mantra from the Guru Granth Sahib, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Ooh, share. I'm interested.
Yeah.
No, well, everything you're saying, I'm resonating very much with it. When you talk about allowing, and going into the flow of things, and saying that meditation is an evolving process, and not having any expectations, and just letting it be. Now, as you said, the art process, it doesn't matter what it is, whether you're drawing or you're dancing or music or whatever it is, it actually, everything behind it is the same. So, it's about letting go of all our preconceived ideas, and for me, that's what any form of art does. So I loved what you have told us today. Thank you so much for it. I wanted to hear more, and Ashley, I definitely want a recording of all of this.
It will be shared for sure. We
Yes.
had a huge amount of interest on social media around this, so I'm sure there will be lots of people watching later on. But I guess seeing both of you has another question that I have, which is I'm sure there are a lot of people who are interested in dance or art or anything that is creative. Maybe they've never done it before. They're a little shy or intimidated. What advice would you have for them to kind of get out of their comfort zone and try some form of artistic expression that's new to them?
Well, right now, with us being in the middle of a pandemic and there being so many restrictions on meeting physically, artists, and I know specifically dancers, have created so many opportunities for free online and sometimes live learning. And you can do these classes in the comfort of your own home. You can do them in a space that makes you feel more safe and less judged. And you can do them at any time. And I think that is such an amazing and a beautiful thing right now, because for me, I've never necessarily seen those three things go together until this point. And even for me, there's points where I feel uncomfortable trying new things, and there's times where I don't feel maybe as safe trying something. And to do it in my own home, maybe following something online, it's a good first step in me trying to overcome that fear. And like many other artists, I also go through preconceived notions or expectations or ideas of what I think should be the outcome or of what I expect to be the outcome. And in these instances, I find the process can become a little bit more challenging and a bit more difficult, and you're placing pressure on yourself. And for some artists that can be good. For some artists that can really hinder their process without them realizing. But I suggest really trying something at home for the first time to see, because it's a safe space and you can find so many resources online, on Facebook, on Instagram, on virtually any social media platform right now. I think that whenever we're trying something new, we also have to be mindful of the fact that everybody is different, has a different mind, has a different body, and therefore might resonate with what is being proposed in a different way, and that's okay. Sometimes we get so caught up in looking a certain way or the outcome being a certain way that we forget to focus on ourselves and what the food we're being fed, which is the art, how that can nourish us. We're just sort of eating it for the sake of eating it, but we're not really nourishing ourselves with it as much. And so I think being mindful of the fact that, if I don't look like that person doing this move, or if my painting doesn't look like how this person's looks like, it's okay. And I think allowing that space and acknowledging that is a really, really good step, because whether we realize it or not, we all sometimes place expectations, or we all have this fear of judgment that holds us back from achieving what we're truly capable of. And I don't think that art is this elitist medium, or I don't think that certain notions of art are only should only be accessible by certain people. I think art is universal. I think it should be accessible universally. And I think that everyone can connect and resonate with it on some layer, on some level, some more than others. And again, I think intention is everything, like putting in an intention. If that resonates with you, it really helps me, and it really helps me realize what my sense of purpose is, why I'm doing something, how I'm going to do it. How can I do it in a way that is respectful, in a way that doesn't harm others in the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just going for it. It's just going for it, and allowing that space for yourself to understand and realize that the art is for you, and is like it's an intimate thing for you. you know, and to forget about the expectations and whatever notions we have. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, you know, it's easier said than done, but that's also part of the work we have as humans. And that's part of the work we have as being conditioned in the society that we're in, you know, because I
It's so
don't
true.
find our society necessarily teaches us to appreciate ourselves as much, or, you know, to be body positive. I think we're bombarded with problems and with things that are wrong about us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We did a cafe several months ago about learning how to love failure, that like failure is okay. And I think, you know, this actually overlaps really well with that, because, you know, our guest was saying that, you know, people are just afraid to fail in our society. Like we see perfection, whether it's on social media or the expectation we have for our exams, and every project that we do has to be perfect. And so, you know, I think that's amazing advice to just tell people, you know, this is one of those areas, again, where like, don't be afraid if you're not good at it, if you're not immediately perfect. Like it's, you know, don't even think of it as failure, just think of it as exploration.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
like
And
no,
patience is so key. I think I'm part of the generation that is very much focused around instant gratification. So I can totally, you know,
yeah,
I can totally resonate with the fact that I feel that the world today is so focused on instant results and instant gratification that we've forgotten what it's like to get there. And getting there is the part that is the most interesting, and that really can feed us the most information at times. And we completely bypass that, completely overlook it with just rushing to get to the destination. And, you know, I think that's also another thing that is super key, is we have to be patient with ourselves. You know, yes, our bodies are very adaptable and they have this amazing ability to be malleable, but it doesn't happen overnight, you know. And I think when we're dealing with certain things, we don't get over them overnight. So patience is also super, super, super important, in addition to having an open mind and having that explorative, inquisitive nature. I find we're all born with that, but, you know, society mutes it down. And we need to get more in touch with that. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of art education and dance programs, especially within the school system, and incorporating it into curriculums from a young age, because like I mentioned, we're moving before we speak. And I think that using dance and other forms of art are so helpful and beneficial in us growing. And from a young age, if we have that, I think it's absolutely useful and very relevant. Yeah.
yeah. Just like, yes.
Yes. I think there was another
Yeah.
question.
Did we have a raised hand? Does somebody have a question? Ellie has a question. Yeah.
Thanks, Rameez. I would have loved to have know you and hear you when I was a kid, because I certainly didn't get that memo about being free to move and to use use my body in a way that expresses myself. But that wasn't a question. I was going to take us in a different direction, and that is your connection to your faith again. And so I know in Islam there is a lot of diversity, and I know the Ismailis too are very involved in interfaith discussion and relationships. So it's one way I've gotten to know a lot of Ismailis and really value that part of Islam. I'd love it if you could comment a bit. So my understanding of Islam is that there's a big emphasis on modesty. And so I'm just wondering how that integrates with dance where we really show our bodies, where a lot of modesty in some of the expressions of Islam is more about not showing, not boasting, but also that sort of more notion of submission to God. So I'm not sure if Ismailis would have a sort of a different way of expressing that part of the faith, or if it's not as important. But I'd just love it if you could comment a bit on that and your perspective of that.
I mean, on a very surface level, whenever we have any performances, or whenever there is a showcase of arts, and there's dance or something visual that involves people that is being presented, there's always sort of guidelines on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, with what we wear. I don't necessarily think that impedes on the connection that we have like with our body and ourselves. But like it's for sure that you won't see, like for example, you won't see like the stomach, or you won't see certain parts of the body when performances are being presented. And that does go back to this whole idea of modesty. Ismailis, when it comes to this, are a bit more liberal than the rest of the Islamic world, from my understanding. So, for example, our women, it's not a requirement to wear hijabs or niqabs. It's not absolutely essential, to be covered. People in the community do it out of respect, but it's not something that is forced or imparted on them like in other branches. And this in itself allows for a bit more, I'm not going to say openness, but it allows for a bit more creativity or room when it comes to expressing certain notions or ideas through costume and through dress. But for sure, when it comes to presenting something visually, or when it comes to the choreographic process in composing a dance piece or composing something, there are certain movements, I guess you can say, will not be as widely accepted or appreciated as much as others. I think also it comes down to intention, and it comes down to what is it that you are trying to present, and in what context are you trying to present it. Because if you fall under the organization of what the community organizes, you're a bit more bound in what you can present and how you can present it.
Okay.
But if you're an artist that is, like, if I'm just an independent artist saying that I come from the Ismaili faith, but this is my interpretation of this, and I present something that is extremely open, and I present something that is really out there, but is not connected necessarily or organized by the Ismaili community, it's kind of like a bit of a bypass. But at the same time, there will be some kind of a response. There will be some kind of a reaction. And I think that's just what the dynamics of the community are. As progressive and as much as we have evolved, there are certain traditions, there are still certain barriers, there are still certain ideologies that are present, because the majority of the Ismaili Muslim community doesn't live in the developed world. They're living in developing countries, or they're living in places that don't necessarily have the most access to education, the most access to certain channels of information. And this speaks to the extension of the work that His Highness the Aga Khan does through the Aga Khan Development Network, to establish schools or to establish centers for knowledge, where people who are less fortunate can come and they can learn about that. But it's never really resulted in something that is vulgar or something that is inappropriate. And most cases, when there are notions or issues of that being brought up, it's nobody's intention to piss somebody off, or it's nobody's intention to disrespect the lineage or the cultures or where we come from. That's why even in the Ismaili community, like I mentioned, because we come from different parts of the world, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Syria, Iran, like there's also a certain level of cultural appropriation that we are trying to address. And cultural appreciation and learning about where Ismailis have been based is very important, because the cultural traditions, the barriers that they face, the ideologies, the way that different Ismaili communities are raised in different parts of the world is completely different. So when you have a global community that falls under this umbrella term of being Ismaili, it's kind of like Islam. You have all these different branches and all these different areas where Ismailis live, and they've all come together over time through generations to have their own sort of like ideologies, to have their own traditions, to have their own way of doing things. It's kind of like, if I compare it on a very surface level, it's kind of like having like the French language or the Arabic language, and then people in France speak it differently, people in Quebec speak it differently, people in Belgium speak it differently. And so the dynamic is kind of like that. Everybody is Ismaili, but within Ismailis, there are different groups of people that come from different parts, and how they see art, how they see dance, and by extension, how they see certain aspects of those art forms being presented will differ. if that
Right.
makes- Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And the other thing, as you speak, sort of comes to mind is that in some traditions, and again in different parts of different traditions, dance can also be a form of prayer. And I think of my own tradition, which is Christianity, where in some more conservative circles, dance is forbidden because it's sort of a showing of your body in a what's considered inappropriate. And in other parts of Christianity, there's prayers that are danced, that are an expression just of the grace of God or whatever. And so I mean I see that diversity very present. And to me philosophically, this dance as prayer or prayer as dance is beautiful. I don't do it. I'm one of those people who loves the metaphor, but whenever when there's a dance or people invite to dance, I'd much rather watch. But I do very much like that notion of expressing our faith through our body and our movement. More than our body, it's the movement and the expressions we make. So yeah, so thank you for your very thoughtful explanation of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just I learned something really interesting when I was speaking to a dance therapist. I had to do an assignment and interview an arts therapist for my introduction to art therapy class. And I spoke to a dance therapist who is based out of Chicago. And she was telling me that the purpose of dance and dance therapy in her eyes is to be accessible to everybody, because everybody can move, regardless of whether it's something that is a micro movement, whether it's something that is more bigger and flowy, but everybody can move no matter what the capability or what the experience or what the situation of them is. And so, I guess, Ashley, going back to your question of what would you tell somebody if they want to be exploring dance and movement, is that you don't have to be a dancer to explore these things. And I think for a lot of classes, for a lot of explorations, people have this notion that I have to be a dancer, or I have to look pretty while dancing, or I have to, do it properly. It's such an absurd notion to me, because, dance is supposed to be accessible because all bodies can move again. And it's just something that I always try to reinforce, and something that I always try to really, really push on everybody, because I feel that dance should be accessible, and I feel that dance can be beneficial for everybody on all levels, and, even something like this can be a gesture. This can be turned into some sort of a performance, some sort of a dance. This can be turned into some sort of meditation. You can do so much with this. And so the possibilities are really, really endless. Again, it just comes down to us being open, being mindful of that, and wanting to experience that. Because when we want to heal, when we want to approach certain traumas, when we want to deal with something or explore something, it has to really come from a willingness inside of us, rather than being fueled by this shadow, or by this, this influence that forces us to do it, as opposed to wanting us to really do it. It's completely different, the outcome.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much. I see that it's about 10 after 3. And so just to kind of respect everyone's time frame, we'll kind of wrap up now. So unless there's any last quick questions, all right. Well, you can always reach out to Rameez through his social media if you have further questions or you want to take a class with him. I know dancers, artists of all forms throughout this pandemic have definitely been struggling. And so I think it's amazing to support any artists. So if you want to try dance, support some dance teachers. And then with that, I want to say thank you, Rameez. It's been such an enlightening conversation, really, really eye-opening, really helped me and hopefully others to see dance in a new way. And so I just want to say thank you. And with that, I'll let Ellie sort of tell it. Next week, we're going to have another Conversation Cafe. It's the last of the semester. So Ellie can quickly mention what that one's going to be. And then we will stop the recording and hang out for a couple minutes in case there's anything else. And then we'll head off into the day. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Yes. And thank you, Rameez. That was a really wonderful way to think of an art form, and I always love it when something that's part of our lives connects with our faith, and because it's in some ways it's all one. So thank you. So next week is our last conversation cafe for the term. We then take a bit of a break as students are focused on final exams and so on, and then we have a break for the holidays, and then we're back in January, I think 19. But next week we have Dr. Paul Garreau. Paul is he's actually a Concordia graduate, and he is now a professor of Native Studies in the Faculty of Native Studies at the University of Alberta. And he will reflect on his journey from religion to relations. He is Métis, and so he will reflect on his own life journey as figuring out who he is, how he identifies, and also including some reflection on Indigenous and settler relationships in Canada. If any of you have taken the massive online Indigenous Canada class, which is very popular and made even more popular by Dan Levy, the actor from Schitt's Creek. So Paul is actually the academic lead for that course. So he'll probably also talk a bit about that, what he's learned, but it's really about his journey on really claiming who he is in the larger context of what Canada is. So I hope you can join us, share the word, share the link. It's the same link as today. And another fun and engaging, it's a engaging and thought-provoking cafe next week, I hope.
Great, thank you.
Ashley, I just had a quick request, and I know we didn't do this at the beginning, but is it possible to just do a quick land acknowledgement?
Yes, for sure. Would you like to do it? Would you like one of us to do it?
I have it pulled up on the Concordia website, so I can read the one that Concordia has.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, yeah. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanyankahaka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Jahjage or Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community.
Thank you, Rameez. I think that's pardon?
I know it's something really, I know it's something that's really small, but part of my work is also very much focused around decolonizing the dance space. And I think that this is a great first step that a lot of us can take in acknowledging and recognizing that we are all settlers on this land and we're all colonizers, and what implications that has on our existence and the existence of the Indigenous.
I agree. Yeah, we're trying to incorporate that into more events that we are doing for sure. And I think that's a great place to end too, and to note, that we are a diverse group of people here today gathering and talking about all these sorts of things, and to recognize even more of that diversity and sort of the origins of the land that we're on, and those diverse peoples is really wonderful. So thank you for that. And I guess now we can stop the recording. So, alrighty. Still recording. Who is recording?
Me, there.
Okay.